When you're doing a shoulder width bent over barbell row, that tends to emphasize your lats. And when you're doing chin-ups and you're doing pull-ups, you're already hitting your lats, right? And one of the functions of the lats, in addition to bringing the arms together, is also to internally rotate the shoulders. So if you're doing too much of that, you're going to end up giving yourself bad posture. So when you do your bent over barbell rows, instead of having your shoulder width grip apart, put it out a little bit farther, so that way you're hitting the back of your shoulders and it's emphasizing your rhomboids as well. The benefit of this is that it's going to help you to provide a little bit more stability when you're putting that barbell on your back for your squats, right? You can squeeze those shoulder blades together, get those rhomboids bunched up, put the bar on there. It's going to give you more stability there. And also, a lot of times people have difficulty getting their hands in the right position because they have such poor shoulder mobility. So balancing yourself out with doing wider grip rows to complement what you're doing with your bench presses can actually be a good way to help you to be better at squatting and also better at bench pressing. Hey guys, Aaron Kubitz, personal trainer, Functional Aesthetics CC, helping busy men over 40 build muscle, shed fat, and perform better in their lives inside and outside the gym. Okay, today we're doing strength program review number 6, Saur 448. So the 448 just stands for the number of reps you're doing in each set. So it goes, you're doing one set where you're doing 4 reps, one set where you're doing another 4 reps, and then 8 reps. And there's a little bit more complexity, which we're going to get into later on in the video. But I'm going to be explaining what the program is, who should do the program, some of the pros of the program, and the cons as well. So a quick breakdown of the routine. This is an intermediate workout routine. You're going to be doing 3 workouts per week. You're going to be doing squat, overhead press, or not squat, overhead press, but bench press and overhead press are done 3 days a week, every single week. Now, the rep ranges are going to vary from week to week and from workout to workout for those different exercises, which we're going to get into a little bit later on in the workout. The other thing is that the volume or the frequency of your squats and deadlifts and your chin-ups and rows is going to vary from week to week. So for example, and then the other thing is that you have 2 different workout schemes. So you have a workout A that you do the first week, a workout B you do the second week, and then in the third week you go back to doing workout A. So for example, workout A, you're going to be doing maybe squatting twice a week. In workout B, that drops down to once a week, and deadlifts go up to twice a week. And then same thing, same concept with your chin-ups. I really like this because it allows you to kind of push the envelope a little bit on certain exercises, but then rotates back so that you're able to bring up the other exercises to that same level. So if you don't have the time to train everything twice a week on every single exercise, or perhaps you're not at the level where you can tolerate that level of volume, this allows you to progress each of them by adding a little extra volume to certain exercises, or a little extra frequency to certain exercises, and then scaling that back while you bring up the other ones as well. So the Saur program differs a little bit from other beginning strength programs, such as strong lifts 5x5 or starting strength, in that there is a little bit more volume, which can be beneficial for somebody who's trying to build a little bit more muscle. So strength programs can oftentimes be good for building strength because the volume is lower, you're devoting more time to intensity, but they're not that great for somebody trying to build more muscle, which, as I said before, why I believe every beginner should first start out with doing 2 to 3 full body workouts per week before they start a dedicated strength program. So the Saur program achieves this higher level of volume in 2 main ways. The first one is that you're doing more sets, and you're also doing more reps per set. Whereas in the starting strength program, you're doing 3 sets of 5 for your big three lifts, right? In the Saur program, you're doing 4 sets of 8 repetitions on most of your lifts. Not all of them, but most of them. And then the second way that you're achieving more volume, I guess there's actually technically 3 because you have more sets, more reps, so that could technically be 2 things. But The second way that you're achieving more volume is that the last set of every exercise is an AMRAP set, meaning that, which is an abbreviation for doing as many reps as possible. So you hitting a set number of reps on each set, right? So the first set you're doing 8 reps, and then the second set 8 reps, third set 8 reps, and then on the final set you just see how many reps you can get out of that. And as I'm going to be talking about a little bit later on in the video, this AMRAP set not only allows you to accumulate a little bit more volume, it's also the way that you progress or determine when and if you should progress to lifting heavier weights in subsequent weeks. Okay, so let's talk periodization or progressing and lifting heavier weights. So most of your starting or beginner strength programs are going to use something called linear progression. It's very straightforward. You have a predetermined amount of weight that you're going to try to add to the bar each and every week for a set period of time, typically somewhere between 3 to 6 weeks. And then after 3 to 6 weeks, you implement a deload, which is where you take a week where you do lower volume and or intensity, and then you resume the cycle over again at a slightly higher intensity than you did in the initial week of the first of your first cycle. So the Saur program does something a little bit different, and this is where the AMRAP that I was talking about before comes into play. So on your AMRAP set, if you exceed your target rep range, i.e. the 8 reps, right? So on the last set, you're having like 4 sets of 8 reps, right? On each and every set, you're trying to hit 8 repetitions. So on this last set, you're also trying to hit 8 repetitions. If you are able to get 10, 11 or more repetitions on that last set, so 2 to 3 more reps than that target rep range, then what you're going to do is you're going to increase the weight the next week by 5 to 10% for upper body exercises and 10 to 20% for lower body exercises. Now, that's a little bit of a broad range there. So if you exceeded your target rep range by more than 3 repetitions in that AMRAP set, then you're going to aim for the higher end of the increase. So 10% for upper body, 20% for lower body. If you were below 3 repetitions and exceeding your target rep range, then you're going to stick to a smaller weight jump. Okay, so another key difference between the Saur program and starting strength and some of these other beginner strength programs is that most of those beginner strength programs, you're squatting 3 times a week. And as I've talked about in other videos, the reason for that is because at a beginner level, you are not yet lifting enough weight to require a very long recovery period, right? And the increased frequency is not only good for helping you to develop movement proficiency and get much, much better at doing the movement, i.e. wax on, wax off, like in Karate Kid, right? Why did he have you do all those different things, right? Is so that you had that neural pattern ingrained in those muscles and it could just happen automatically, almost without thinking. The same thing here with the squats. Also, a higher level of frequency is going to be a little bit more ideal for building muscle, more ideal for hypertrophy, right? And as a beginner, even if your primary goal is to be a power lifter, having bigger muscles is going to allow you to have more strength potential when you ultimately start lifting heavier weights. And so in the Saur program, you're only squatting twice per week instead of that 3 times per week. The other advantage of this, which is good for intermediate to advanced lifters, is that when you're lifting those heavier weights, sometimes it's going to require you more recovery time before you're ready to go and do a similar effort again. And so by doing this and alternating between more deadlift volume and more squat volume, you allow yourself to actually work that posterior chain a little bit more with the deadlifts, bring that up a little bit more, and then also not totally rock your leg muscles too much when you're doing your squats. Anyway, kind of garbled that up. Hopefully that makes sense. Another key difference in the Saur program is that there is more exercise variety. You have the addition of the bent over barbell row, or it can be any row variation actually, as long as it's not like one arm rows or something like that. You can do seated cable rows, you can do T-bar rows. You can do inverted rows. I'm just have a preference for the bent over barbell row. I think it's a very good athletic movement. It really helps to integrate hamstring involvement with your lower back, which is going to have much more crossover to actual real everyday life, right? A lot of guys say, well, the bent over barbell rows are very hard on your lower back. And I'm like, well, just don't lift as much weight. Because, now this is my perspective, right? At the end of the day, what is the point of lifting a weight that you would not be able to lift naturally in a natural environment outside of the gym, right? Yes, you can like add some accessory movements in, but you should not lose the ability to do basic functions, right? And so if you're doing these bent over barbell rows and you're like, well, my hamstrings or my back is fatiguing or something like that, that means you need to lighten up the weight a little bit and continue to build that endurance in the hamstrings, endurance in your erectors, until you are able to handle that amount of weight. So you got the barbell rows, you also have chin-ups. So a lot of beginner programs, they have, you're doing all the bench pressing, you're doing the overhead pressing. Both of these things vicariously end up hitting your triceps at some point in that movement, right? But you're not really hitting your biceps at all when you're doing your squats, when you're doing your deadlifts, when you're doing your bench presses, and when you're doing your overhead presses. Yes, when you're doing your deadlifts, your biceps play a very minimal stabilizer role in that movement, but otherwise, you're not really hitting them at all. So adding some chin-ups in there can help to balance out your elbow joint, making sure that and the shoulder joint too, because the bicep actually acts on the shoulder as well, as does the tricep. The tricep actually helps to extend your shoulder a little bit, and that's why when you do lat pull downs or tricep press downs, if you begin the movement with your elbows slightly up and come back, you actually are enhancing the action of that tricep a little bit, as opposed to just being straight just like this, right? And never going into it, because that is indeed part of the function of that. And so if we're talking about transfer over to everyday life, getting those elbows up a little bit and then squeezing it down is not going to be a bad issue for you. So adding those chin-ups in can help balance out the triceps muscles, and then the rows and the chin-ups both work your lat muscles, right? And when I'm doing my rows, since if you're doing like pull-ups or anything like that too, I tend to like to do a little bit wider. And so since this program doesn't have pull-ups per se, it just has the chin-ups in there, maybe you can alternate back and forth between doing some chin-ups, doing some pull-ups, so you work the lat muscles a little bit more as well. But when you're doing a shoulder width bent over barbell row, that tends to emphasize your lats. And when you're doing chin-ups and you're doing pull-ups, you're already hitting your lats, right? And one of the functions of the lats, in addition to bringing the arms together, is also to internally rotate the shoulders. So if you're doing too much of that, you're going to end up giving yourself bad posture. So when you do your bent over barbell rows, instead of having shoulder width grip apart, put it out a little bit farther, so that way you're hitting the back of your shoulders and it's emphasizing your rhomboids as well. The benefit of this is that it's going to help you to provide a little bit more stability when you're putting that barbell on your back for your squats, right? You can squeeze those shoulder blades together, get those rhomboids bunched up, put the bar on there. It's going to give you more stability there. And also, a lot of times people have difficulty getting their hands in the right position because they have such poor shoulder mobility. So balancing yourself out with doing wider grip rows to complement what you're doing with your bench presses can actually be a good way to help you to be better at squatting and also better at bench pressing. And then the other thing that I left out was that the lats do play a bit of a stabilizer role in doing the bench press as well. So if you're developing your lats but you're doing the chin-ups, that's going to also help carry over into your other exercises. Main point is here, has more accessory, more complete sort of a program, not only going to be beneficial for building more muscle, it's also going to be beneficial for helping to avoid muscular imbalances, because at the end of the day, you know, even if your goal is just to bench press as much weight as you can, squat as much as you can or whatever, hitting those accessory movements, building up those weak muscles that assist in your compound movements is going to help you to become a stronger lifter and a healthier lifter. Okay, so the next key difference in the Saur program is that the volume not only and the frequency not only varies from week to week, but also within the week as well. So for example, you have the 4-4-8, right? So since you're doing in one workout, for example, if in one workout you are doing bench press and overhead press in the same workout, okay? And so what's really nice about this is that in workout 1 of the week, because like you're training your bench press and your overhead press, I believe 3 days a week in this program, right? And so in workout 1, for example, you're doing 4x4 in the bench press and then 4x8 in the overhead press. In the next workout, that flips. So you'd be doing 4x8 for the bench press and 4x4 for the overhead press. And then the final week or final day of the program of the week, you are doing your build up or your AMRAP thing, right? So you'd be doing building up, and instead of 4 sets of 8, it's just going 8, 4, 3, 1, right? And you're trying to hit a heavier weight on that last one, and then the following week it flips, and instead of, for example, trying to max out on your bench press, you're trying to max out on the overhead press, and it flip-flops back and forth from week to week. Now, what's nice about this for like chin-ups per se, as opposed to doing barbell rows, is that if you think back to the primal movement patterns that I've talked about in some of my other videos, there are 6 of them, right? And one of those primal movement patterns is pulling, right? And that can be further divided into vertical pulling and horizontal pulling, okay? So chin-ups, pull-ups, lat pull-downs, those are all examples of your vertical pulling movements. And then the horizontal movement is things like your T-bar rows, your reverse flies, your barbell rows, inverted rows, all those kind of exercises that are pulling in the horizontal plane. And as I stated earlier in this video, a lot of times guys will think, well, I'm working my back because I'm doing my pull-ups and everything, or I'm doing my lat pull-downs, but they're still working it in that vertical plane. They're leaving out the horizontal plane. I believe it was Dr. John Rusin said that you should have a 3-to-1 ratio between horizontal pulling and vertical pulling. So this is for one reason. A while back I had the goal that I wanted to get up to doing 20 pull-ups in a row. However, that would mean that I would also have to triple the amount of inverted rowing or barbell rowing or horizontal type movements that I was able to do, and then you have to keep that in line with the entire scheme of the rest of your workout as well. So it's nice to shoot for a bigger bench press or bigger squats or deadlift or things like that, but you also have to remember keeping your entire routine in balance and making sure that the rest of your body keeps up with that as well is important to avoid injuries later on down the road. Okay, so one little tip here on how to do this program. The program does end up ramping up very quickly, okay? So what you don't want to do is start off too heavy in your numbers. One mistake some guys will make is that if they've been away from lifting for a while, they're starting a new program or whatever, they will use, or if they're already a power lifter, they will use the numbers that they did in a meet a couple months ago or a year ago as to determine the loads that they should be using in the current program. So you want to actually test out what your current abilities are, and if anything, be slightly conservative, because that will give you a longer period to ramp up your strength, as opposed to if you start out too heavy, you're going to plateau really fast. So we want to allow you more time to accumulate that volume and build yourself up. And ultimately, if you take a longer runway, your end point will be higher than if you start out too fast too soon, similar to people who have experience with distance running. If you come out the gate too fast, you end up bombing later on in the race, hitting the wall a little bit too fast, as opposed to if you say, I'm going to stick to this pace, I'm going to maintain that, and regardless of what everybody else around me is doing, I'm going to stick to my pace, I'm going to follow the plan, and that way they're able to run the fastest possible race, as opposed to having a really fast first quarter or first half split, and then it drastically going down from there. So this kind of similar concept with this here. The other thing is, once you start getting into those, you know, hitting your peak, you start getting to that really heavy reps and everything, this is when you might want to maybe scale the reps back a little bit, maybe even doing more sets than this 4x8 thing, and maybe you're doing sets of 6 or 7 with sets of 4 to 3 reps when you're getting in this heavier range as you're approaching that point where you're starting to hit the plateau. Alright guys, so overall I really like this program. I actually like it a little bit more than some of the other programs that we talked about, starting strength, strong lifts, simply just because it has a little bit more volume, specifically because beginners are still working on developing some of that muscle mass. Yes, it is a strength program, but having a little bit more volume is not going to be detrimental to strength. It might actually be help you with that strength, and it's also going to help you to build up that muscle, which as a beginner, even an intermediate, you're still in the process of kind of hitting that genetic potential with your total amount of muscle mass that you can build, and then from there you continue to get a little stronger, but you can get stronger for quite some time after you hit that genetic ceiling as far as muscle size goes. The other thing is, I like that there's a little bit more variation of exercises. It offers a good balance between pushing and pulling. You got more work for your biceps and your lats, which can help to balance out all the work for the triceps, and also that work for the lats and your upper back with doing the rowing and stuff can help you to have a better squat, have a stronger squat, help you to assist in the bench press, and also assist when you're doing your deadlifts as well, since those lats help you to pull that bar back as you're coming up off the floor. So the lats are involved when you're doing your deadlifts too, so that having those chin-ups in there and those rows can be a nice accessory movement way to build that up. So overall, I think this is a great program. Perhaps even having some utility for guys who are, for athletes, you know. It's probably not the best program, or it is not the best program for if you are for bodybuilding. And again, it's not a bodybuilding program. So it kind of hits that nice balance between being a pure bodybuilding program and being a powerlifting or strength program to allow intermediate lifters to continue to develop their strength a little bit more, to continue to progress because they've developed a better work capacity than a beginner, and they don't need quite as much complexity to their program yet as per se an advanced lifter would to continue getting stronger. Alright guys, that concludes the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, you got something out of it to inform your decision in what program might be the best program for you starting out on your lifting journey. If you'd like to get more information on program design like this, whether it's for building muscle, shedding body fat, improving athletic performance, or information about nutrition for the same things, athletic performance, shedding body fat, building muscle, or last but not least, how to work around injuries should you sustain them in the gym, and hopefully also learning techniques on how to prevent those injuries from happening to begin with, then consider subscribing to the channel by hitting the button in the lower right hand corner of the screen, and we'll see you all next time for more health and fitness information.